which is my camera? Okay. Rolling? Hello and welcome to CNBC TV 18, and EY presents AI Forward, Shaping India's AI Story, a special series that brings together thought leaders to explore how artificial intelligence is reshaping industries, driving innovation and accelerating India's digital transformation. From financial services to healthcare, AI is creating new possibilities, improving efficiency and unlocking value like never before. Today, we turn our focus to life sciences and healthcare, a sector at the forefront of AI-driven change, with generative AI revolutionizing patient engagement, diagnostics, drug discovery, and personalized medicine. And this panel that I have here with me today will dive into how AI is enhancing healthcare outcomes, overcoming infrastructure and regulatory challenges, and paving the way for a smarter, more efficient future in Indian healthcare. Without further ado, let me introduce our panel to you. We've got Raj Gore, the CEO of Healthcare Global Enterprises. Raj, many thanks for joining us. Also with us, Abrali Dalal, MD and CEO of Shayadri Hospitals. Abrali, many thanks for being here. Anirudh Singh, the GM at the CMD's office at Alchem. Anirudh, great to have you on the panel. Kshitij Murdia, the CEO of Indra IVF. Kshitij, it's great to have you with us on the panel. Samir Desai, the President and Head of Biologics at Zydus Life Sciences. Samir, it's great to have you here with us. Ajay Mahipal, the Partner Health Quad and Board Member of Cure.AI. Vice eKinCare, Beta O, Beta Drugs and Impact Guru. Great to have you with us, Ajay. Kevan Movadwala, the Partner and Healthcare Lead at EY Parthenon India, EY India. And Suresh Subramanian, Partner and Life Sciences Leader at EY Parthenon India, EY India. Gentlemen, appreciate you joining us here on the program. Without further ado, let's dive straight into it. And I'm going to give the two EY gents the first say for the context setting, so to speak. Let's start with you. When we look at AI adoption, and we did the big AI summit with EY a few months ago, or actually less than a few months ago, where we talked about where adoption rates are currently in India, and it's fairly nascent at this point in time. If you look at the healthcare and life sciences space, what is the experience so far?
Sure, and I think, Shane, before that, I'll just share a quick context on why this is becoming important. On the demand side, we're seeing a very discernible shift from the unorganized to the organized. The market share of organized players has gone up by 20% over the last few years. They've been growing at 20 to 40% annually. On the supply side, what we're seeing unfolding is a great expansion story. We've got $10 billion of private equity capital coming in over the last 5 to 6 years. Tremendous supply getting added in metros, in tier 1 cities. And what's really now happening is that while the hardware is getting built, which is the beds, the new hospitals, what is really needed is to focus on software, which is basically the talent, the deepening of clinical programs, and a laser-sharp focus on efficiency. And the underpinning force for this is going to be technology and AI. While primitive, the study that we did revealed that this could contribute over the next 7 years, 60 billion in India's GDP. And at least 65% of the providers are today evaluating Gen AI in some form or the other. The only part is that of those 65%, a large part of them, the POCs are still on. So we still to wait for results to really germinate. But the story has begun. I think every provider realizes that this is going to be a real ammunition to drive differentiation in the sector.
You believe that this could be a game changer, a potential game changer in the future, but you also talked about the influx of private equity into this space. Do you believe that that is aiding or accelerating the move towards more technology or more software, as you called it?
So I think it's still early. I think the acceleration is more, like I said, more towards the hardware, medical technology, doctor programs, newer clinical offerings. Technology is still, across the country and not just in India, but globally. Healthcare has been a little lazy adopter of tech. I think this private equity capital will clearly catalyze this process going forward. And I do expect investments, the kind of investments which are happening on the HIS, on CRM, on patient apps, wearables, a lot of this will actually develop an ecosystem where this can really progress going forward.
Well, we'll get the service providers to talk about developing the ecosystem and what they're doing about that in just a second. But Suresh, let me come to you now and talk about what's happening on the life sciences side as well, because that's the big hope, that we're going to be able to use generative AI specifically to be able to crunch the time it takes for R&D, for drug discovery. From an Indian life sciences pharmaceutical point of view, how significant is the play at this point in time, and what potential is it likely to unlock?
Well, as you would have guessed, the beginnings are small, but we're beginning to see investments into R&D. Let me take the examples of CRDMO, contract research, development, and manufacturing organizations. They all have drug development platforms. So R&D, in real sense, having AI and R&D to shorten drug development periods is actually on, so the CRDMOs service global pharma, and it's only a matter of time before they service India. The second place where we've seen investments is in the area of manufacturing and quality. To kind of, we are a nation that has to operate on scale, so that's become the next place to go. Let me also give you one data point. Currently, Indian pharma is about 55 billion or so. It's expected that we would catapult to 130 billion by 2030. And the focus of what's going to drive this huge leap is innovation. And that's centered around AI. So in a survey that we had for our recent book launch of AI report, 50% of the participants who were pharma CEOs said that they had pilots running to date. Right? And 25 of them had crossed the pilot stage into scaling up. So that's good news. So not anything to write home about now, but certainly there's a start. And I guess there will be some time, as the costs and the perceived benefits, people become more aware. We've seen DeepSeek coming now. So I guess it'll improve and it will inflect, and then there's no catching.
Yeah, I would imagine the ROI question is a real question that's being asked today, and that is what is going to catapult people from moving from the pilot stage to actually being able to scale and take that forward. But, you were talking about innovation, and one of the things that Indian life sciences and pharmaceuticals has been hoping to do is to move up the innovation cycle. Do you believe that this could provide that inflection point as the costs, of course, reduce as well? Access to capital and risk capital specifically has been a big challenge. Do you believe that with the advent of AI, we could, to some extent, address that issue?
Yes. I think a large part of it was what I told you about innovation being the center. And it's also part of how the pharma is transcending from small molecules to innovative molecules to large molecules to biologics. And I think AI will play a big role in fast-tracking and also allowing Indian companies play at scale and compete in the global market. That's point number one. The second part is, the lines of healthcare between a pharma and healthcare delivery are slowly blurring. So there are a lot of pharma companies working in tandem with providers, buying medtech and extending, working along with health tech companies and healthcare platforms. We have Samir here.
Yeah.
And those are very interesting examples, and those are adding to new business models that probably pharma had not seen before. So we have a couple of companies which have diagnostics, which have medtech, pharma, and are also partnering health tech. So I guess there are levers that will come up, and the more we see the insurance penetration, the ABDM moving out, I guess healthcare delivery and pharma's role in that ecosystem will only go up. And I see that, of course, it's another conversation that how does this ecosystem actually contribute to healthcare delivery? To my mind, AI is going to play a large role in interoperability and also bring down healthcare costs and improve access.
Yeah, I think the access deficit, if it can address that, will be a big one. But Samir, let's talk about some of the interesting levers that Suresh was talking to us about, and take us through what you're seeing on the ground at this point in time, both in terms of the opportunities, but also the challenges with regards to adoption.
So I guess, and I'll pick up from where Suresh left. one of the areas, especially when it comes to drug discovery, where AI can help and is helping now, many of the companies are deploying it, is in finding the right target indications. Today we have new drugs that are being discovered that work across systems. Immunology, for example. Identifying the right target indications and making sure that the product is developed in that indication rather than the old approach of taking a target, cellular target, and working on it and maybe discovering at a much later stage whether or not the drug is most effective option for that. Also, chemical libraries being sifted and potential new drugs being identified much quicker compared to what was the earlier practice. The other area where diagnostics, health tech, pharmaceuticals or therapeutics, and patient care are coming together, and that is where I think a lot of value that can be generated is in creating digital ecosystems. So, right, once a patient, especially on chronic disease, take for example a cancer, is diagnosed, from that time onwards till post-treatment, the patient actually needs support throughout.
Yeah.
Typically, the engagement of pharma companies has been limited to providing the drugs. But today, digital ecosystems are being created which actually handhold the patient and, more importantly, the caregivers, the family.
Yeah.
Throughout the whole journey of going through the treatment, counseling being provided, other services being provided, which actually helps improve patient outcomes. And beyond that, what happens when you have such digital ecosystems? You develop data patterns which otherwise would not really be very evident, but with big data analytics and with AI, one would be able to discern a lot of patterns which later can be used to provide even more targeted support to the patients and making sure that they get the best outcomes that and are able to lead healthier lives.
So are you prioritizing investing in generative AI at this point in time? Do you have pilots running that you're confident of being able to scale up?
I wouldn't say generative AI in its fullest sense, but yes, we do have pilots. We do actually have digital ecosystems for patients today, which are actually running and helping hundreds of patients, maybe in the thousands as we speak.
Okay, well, that's good to hear, and I'll come back to you in a second. But Raj, let's address some of the issues that we've heard so far on the panel in terms of the possibilities that generative AI specifically can do to change patient outcomes, improve patient outcomes, specifically as far as the space of oncology is concerned. A, what's the experience so far for you? B, what's the kind of potential that you foresee?
Yeah, so thank you, Shirin. If there is any specialty where AI, ML can play largest role, I think it's oncology, because let's look at it. It's still largely unknown, rapidly evolving, highly complex. It's not one disease. It's like there are more than hundreds and we are discovering more and more. Every day we are learning more about how you get cancer, how it progresses, how it responds or doesn't respond.
Unfortunately.
So there is a reason why head of state still keep declaring moonshots after like 6 decades after we put the moon, because that's how dynamic oncology is. In addition, what has happened is with progress in genomics, where you can do a genetic test at $200 to $300 in 1 or 2 days versus 13 years to decode first DNA with $3 billion investment. There's the proliferation of genetic data and the progress in molecular imaging with the kind of resolution, kind of visual information we have, adoption of electronic medical records, and rising incidence of cancer. This has created a data explosion. And therefore, we have so much data variables available for us. If we apply these technologies, can give us insights on understanding how cancer comes, how it progresses, and finding the right outcomes. However, I think most of the models that are available are done on Western population.
Yes.
And we need something for India. And that's a expensive task. I don't think that a single player can do.
No.
On the other hand, still 70% of India's districts don't have a comprehensive cancer care center. So our focus will continue to be, to create comprehensive cancer care infrastructure to treat. However, we understand that this is where the future is. So right now we are focusing on doing co-pilots with partners who have, for whom Gen AI is higher priority, and therefore creating internal capabilities through partnerships so that we don't miss out, in the long term.
That's a very important point that you make, and I'll get everybody else to comment on this as well. The fact that a lot of the work that's happening, a lot of the models that are being trained at this point in time are being trained on Western, attributes and so on and so forth, and the need to have Indian data. The role that you believe, the private sector, of course, has a role that can play, but I would imagine it's largely going to be limited at this point in time with the heavy lifting being done by the government. How do you see this public-private partnership evolve in this space?
So, Shirin, first, I think as private players, our focus has always been a hardware, and we've not harnessed the power of digital technology, whether to give that fantastic experience to patients or used to drive things like AI and Gen AI. So our focus has been last 2-3 years is actually invest in creating our data infrastructure, put applications to capture data, integrate it uniformly so that we have structured data set. If every player does it, I hope that, one of the opportunity that is there, that government takes the initiative and create an open AI kind of a infrastructure, because individually for any player, this will be very difficult to do. But if there is a, like Ayushman Bharat or, digital mission, if you create, initiative to create LLM models specifically for Indian gene pool, then we'll be very happy to participate. And I think that probably a practical way to go forward.
Well, I would imagine that is part of the government's thinking at this point in time. And of course, the common compute facility is being looked at as part of the India AI mission. But Ajay, let's talk about how we can nurture and forge these partnerships. You're investing in companies that are specifically trying to address some of the problems that Raj and others were talking about. What gives you hope and confidence on the back of the very sort of small gains that we may have made at this point in time? But what does the future look like? What's the line of sight?
No, great question. And a very interesting case studies and companies who are essentially building not just for India, but for the world. And also in terms of how much Indian patient data are we using to develop some of the technologies. I'll address both of them. I represent HealthCore. HealthCore is India's largest digital health innovation fund, where we back disruptive models to solve for affordability, accessibility, and quality of care. And since Raj picked up on the oncology segment where they're focused on, I'll start with that. So just to give you some statistic, there's an 18% survival rate if lung cancer is detected in stage 3 and stage 4. And there is a 73% survival rate if lung cancer is detected in stage 1 or stage 2. And lung cancer, among all cancers, is the most common cause of deaths within the cancer segment. And here we have a company called Cure.AI, who we are investors in. It's among the top 5 AI radiology companies globally now, and it's deployed across 90 plus countries, 3,000 plus sites, and essentially has 18 US FDA approvals, and can essentially detect lung nodule on a chest X-ray. And it's the only company in the world which has a US FDA approval on that. And now big pharma like AstraZeneca, Merck, etc., are partnering with this company to essentially be able to put the patient to detect, also to screen, and then to diagnose early, and then you could essentially put them on treatment path early. So some phenomenal work, and this has been developed on 1 billion images, medical images, on Indian patient, by the way. And algorithms have been devised basis that. But of course, when you go for US FDA approval, you have to do some of the clinical studies in US as well, which the company has clinically concluded, and essentially that's how they got their approval. But some phenomenal work. And in this whole AI race, essentially, detecting early and disease screening is the big theme. And if you can essentially, and it's being used for almost everything, not just lung cancer, for tuberculosis as well, and for stroke as well. You can triage patients faster, even for tuberculosis. India carries the 26% burden in India for all the global TB patients. And WHO has allowed, Cure is one of those companies where they have allowed them to essentially be an autonomous AI. It doesn't need a radiologist validation. So these are great case studies coming out of India and solving for the global healthcare challenge.
No, absolutely. And, again, it addresses the problems that we were talking about, the access deficit that we were talking about, also the capability deficit that we do need to contend with as well. But Abrali, let me come to you now. And, how are you seeing what's happening at this point in time in terms of an inflection point? What's the thinking? What's the outlook on how you believe you can adopt AI to move forward?
Yeah, thanks, Charan. So, first of all, I believe that AI is going to be very beneficial for healthcare, both in terms of clinical, non-clinical, medical, non-medical management. But I think we have a way to go before we are able to implement it effectively. Because AI is all about data. It's about analyzing data and then analyzing trends and then being able to arrive at outcomes based on that data. Now, if you look at the challenges that hospitals face, I'll just categorize it into 3 or 4 buckets. So the first is talent. You need people who understand AI and healthcare. That's number 1. Number 2, you need people who can correlate the clinical data, or the clinical validation with data. Okay, and this talent is not yet there. Rare to find in India because most AI is at an early stage. And most of the experts who understand AI work for medtech companies and Gen.AI, so on and so forth. So one is talent. Second is infra. Now tomorrow, if I have to kind of punch in data into the hospital, you need the correct infrastructure. AI requires high-end imaging, cloud implementation. It requires cybersecurity, analysis. And most of the hospitals are not there in terms of that infrastructure because, one is, if you look at any large chain, there are various hospitals, it's made of various hospitals which are acquired through M&A. And every hospital is not at the right platform. So can we really get there? Third is data. Now, if you look at data in hospitals, data is not digitized. It is paper. It is reports, and until you don't digitize data, you cannot expect an outcome. So data is a problem, and large is regulatory. If you look at the government, like Raj said, that they should open up. The government should, through ABDM, so on and so forth. But if you look at the recent DISHA and the DPDP Act of 23, the government actually has put restrictions on data privacy. And until you're not able to get volume of data, AI won't work. So I think these are the challenges. Now, how do you get over these challenges? One, you implement cloud. Number 2, you kind of partner with any AI company and the government, or train your clinicians on AI. Because the clinician is the best person who can actually interpret the data and give it a meaningful outcome. And lastly, the government has to give some concessions on data privacy. Because until that doesn't happen, it's not going to really be of benefit. So I think the expenses in currently getting our infrastructure, getting the basic cake in place, and then on that use AI. But if you ask me, so we use AI for simple marketing tools like AI chatbot. So currently we do have AI chatbot where you go on the website and the chatbot can answer basic questions, which would earlier have gone to the call center. So you type in, okay, I want to meet this doctor, so appointment date, so on and so forth. So that's where something we are using AI. Hospital efficiency improves with AI. So you kind of deploy AI on inventory management. It helps you manage your reorder levels. It decreases paperwork in terms of patient load, patient file management, and creates efficiencies where that manpower can be deployed at more critical areas. So this is where we are, I think. But until you don't really get that basic cake in place, I don't know if you can really look at the high level AI, and that's where the expense lies. That's what I think.
So what are we talking about then? Do you believe that this is still a 5 5 odd year, cycle before we actually are able to get to that high level AI and executing on that, as you say?
I don't want to put a time to it, but as you said, the private equity infusion with funds coming in, and that is one thing. So the funds would be available, but secondly, the hospitals should have the stamina and the wherewithal to get that software, the basics in place. So I don't know about the timeline. I think I'll leave that to the panel, but this is what I strongly believe.
Okay, Raj, let me ask you, where do you believe we are at in the journey at this point in time? Do you believe it is in fact a priority that that hospitals like yours are looking at, that service providers are looking at?
I think it's a priority.
Or is it efficiency that's driving the execution at this point in time?
The use cases are more proven in the areas that Abrar spoke about, whether it's transactional stuff in shared services or inventory levels and all. But I think the real value add will come in the clinical areas. And I think for us to do it ourselves means you need to take care of patient safety, patient privacy, and then in general lack of clear regulatory framework. So currently, we are focusing on partnerships with companies which are bringing new tools, diagnostic tools. Can we go do partnership and screen as much population as possible to identify, detect cancer earlier? Partnership with NGS equipment companies. Can we use AI, Gen AI, to read the bioinformatics data that we get? One, genetic test creates 60 GB, 100 GB data. Can we deploy there so that we start reporting things that are difficult to report otherwise for an individual person? Tying up with radiation or imaging equipment manufacturer who are adding AI capabilities on top of hardware to make oncology treatment more precise and personalized. In radiation machine, you do contouring of the tumor. Can you do auto contouring with AI? And every time clinician says, yes, this is correct, the machine learns itself. Can you fuse different images, MRI and PET, to understand the tumor better? So I think we are developing our internal capability mindset through this partnership. Those are logical steps for us before we think about anything big on our own. Because there is still opportunity while you talk about AI. We still need to put the basic hospitals in many parts of India.
Absolutely. And Kshitij, let's address that issue, from your perspective and how you believe that it's likely to change things for you. We were just talking about the fact that it could potentially be a differentiator. What's your take on this at this point in time?
Thank you. First, I have two comments on whatever we've discussed. Kevan said healthcare is a laggard. I would say, once India starts adopting, it might be little late in adopting AI, but once we have, Ajay mentioned 15 FDA approvals on a platform built on India. Wherever I go with Indra IVF data and all globally, and I think Kevan also knows a lot of fertility segment globally, I get a comment that this type of data we have never seen in our life. And these are comments coming from global fertility hospitals being in existence for 30 years.
Why? What's so special?
We should realize, all of us should realize that we are always talking about data not being available, but the amount of data you have in India is second to none. The amount of population you are treating, the amount of patients we are getting in our hospitals, be it any hospital, oncology, fertility, or a multi-specialty, the amount of data we have, no one in the world has. It's all about putting your head down first and getting the basics right. As Abali said, have a good hospital information system. And I am a big fan of simple things first and go for scale, right?
Yes.
First, put a basic digitized record in your hospital to say, can I record the age, name, PIN code, clinical data, blood tests, prescriptions, everything digitally. And this force has to come from the top leadership. If you ask a doctor to write a prescription on computer, he or she would never be happy, right? That has to come from the top. And being a doctor, I know how difficult it is to start not talking to the patient with the eye contact and writing a prescription to suddenly switching on the side and typing
What
something
would
on
we do
the
without
computer.
prescriptions that nobody can actually decipher? It would be life changing.
Now there are many platforms. Doctor can keep scribbling and it will convert. Obviously the hallucinations and other things and the accuracy needs to go up, but it has gone up in the last 5 years. So what we've done at Indra IVF in the last 5 years is put our head down, make sure that 95% of our clinical journey is all digitized. We have a data lake connected. And apart from the basics like, having a chatbot, using RPAs to process documents, having a virtual call center agent, I think the big leap that we've taken in the last 4 years is having a data lake, having all our systems communicate data to that one data lake and have those intelligent dashboards coming out. So our core is our EMR system, that is the electronic medical records. And I bet, there are 50 dashboards coming out of it, 100 emails every day going out of that dashboard automatically with even my name, to a center head that boss in your center, these 4 parameters are not good yesterday. And though everybody is getting alerted and I don't have to work for that. I have defined the rules in the system and then system picks up every center data out of the 160 centers.
So you've been
throws
replaced.
an email.
You've been replaced.
Yes. And I strongly believe it in not just the business data, but also the medical data. Being a doctor, we are also working on a lot of Gen AI and ML models to say my treatment protocol has to flow in this particular order. If a doctor can think about 5 variables that, okay, a patient is this age, this comorbidity, male or a female, with this disease, with these symptoms, and this blood test report, this should be the treatment. It's all very well organized and defined in medical literature. And this is what we do and live every day.
You make it sound easy, but I would imagine it's been anything but that. So take us through what the journey has been like over the last 5 years of making sure that you actually move from idea to execution. What have been some of the key challenges that you've had to contend with?
I think first is to make that digital ecosystem, make sure you enforce every data being entered correctly on time in that digital ecosystem. That's the massive challenge, I would say, in healthcare. That because otherwise it's garbage in, garbage out. You put in garbage data at different intervals, you will never be able to make sense of it. And I think the last 5 years, 2-3 years have been spent on making sure that compliance to that digital data entry is ensured. And then you get into a step of having those intelligent reports, insights from that data, and then go to the next level of saying, AI. AI is a very sexy word, sorry to use that comment. But we use it very, very loosely to say,
yes, we do.
Everybody would say, I have 5 or 10 AI projects going on in my company, but you really go deep down, most of it is ML or engineering or some logistics or algorithm running at the back end. And I think that's the first step to take. Once you have that, then have those compliance going on, then build up the data lake and architecture. We've been successful in the last 2-3 years, I would say, to compile all my data right from a person thinking about IVF, clicking on a Facebook ad to actually having a baby. I would have 1,000+ data points of that patient, single patient, in my data lake now. So you can effectively use that data to, not to use say retarget, but optimize the patient journey, make sure the complications are low, make sure you make that journey very customized to that patient. Now, just taking one small example, if a patient has come to one of our centers, has met Siraj as a doctor, and he is suffering from a low sperm count, my communication to that patient would go specifically for low sperm count with his AI image that he's speaking to the patient in a short 5-minute video explaining what is low sperm count, how it is hampering your fertility, what can we do about low sperm count, how IVF can help.
So now you're trying to replace Raj also.
So that's what we are sending now. It's a 5-minute video automatically stitched from the engine, picking up clues that, okay, this patient had this problem, blood test said this, doctor he consulted was Raj. Just stitch everything, make a 5-minute video and push it to the patient. Just in a form to say higher engagement and all. But I think the most important thing in the entire thing is the whole industry coming together and have this as a medical curriculum in our medicine. Because the biggest bottleneck is doctors, I would say.
Yeah, the doctors have to adopt it.
Adopting the technology. And sometimes we feel a fear that are we replacing ourselves by adopting these engines and all. But I think doctors are the best, as you said. If they understand both the medical and the AI side of it, it's going to, make a big change in the organization.
It's not just doctors. I think the fear is palpable across different industries, but one must also recognize the fact that, in fact, some of the tools that you spoke of can augment our abilities and augment our capabilities as well. Anirudh, what's the story like with you at this point in time? What are you guys experimenting with?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the things that we've experimented in something similar to what Kshitij said, right? So, Pharma is a business where we, really go to a lot of the doctors, we go to an expert audience, and we have a lot of sales representatives, right? And not every sales representative has a scientific or a technical background. So I think one of the things what we've piloted over the last 2 months is a sort of a co-pilot with Gen AI, which helps the sales representative, which is integrated with our sales platform. And when the sales representative goes to meet the doctor and he's talking about a product or talking about a disease or talking about a particular scientific aspect or some new scientific paper on that particular disease area. So it really helps him in terms of strategizing his interaction with the healthcare professional, right? So it's something much more personalized, something catered to that doctor. Secondly, as I mentioned, right, not a lot of them come from a scientific background. So, oftentimes the doctor would ask you a question that what is the drug-drug interaction, or what is the latest research on the safety of this molecule. So I think that is another question which typically the representative would say, let me get back to you, and that would be a couple of days, and he would get back to him on his next visit. But with this, he can instantly engage with the chatbot and answer the question. So I think that's something wonderful, where over the course of the pilot, we've seen that the confidence level of some of these salespersons have really increased. The customer engagement has become much better, and it's become much more data-driven. So I think that is one side of it. Secondly, I think, we've been also tinkering with a lot of other applications, whether it's HR, whether it's, packaging design, product management, and so on and so forth. But I think, because we're also in that space, so we've also been hearing from we also are in the CDMO space. So we've also been hearing from a lot of customers about how they feel that Gen AI and AI is going to disrupt that space, right? And that is something that we're looking to do. So, for example, I was recently speaking to one of the senior professionals who's part of the R&D team of a big pharma company in the US, and he was telling me that what they see, the top conversation in their boardrooms today, is the fact that Gen AI and AI as a whole is going to disrupt the whole drug discovery process, as you were mentioning about, right? So today, the drug is going to be discovered by, not by the big R&D setups, but more than half of the drugs in the future are going to be discovered from these small, what we call in the pharma parlance, virtual biotechs, right? So, pharma companies with 10, 12, 20 people instead of, the big pharma with billions of dollars in R&D spend and hundreds, if not thousands of scientists. So I think that is an area also we're closely looking at it. It's a little early, of course, in that space, because there's a lot of, regulatory scrutiny involved, and we need to get a lot of things right. AI hallucinations have been talked about. So I think these are two areas where we've been, really seeing close application in our company.
And, when you talk about the co-pilot experiment that you're working on, is this something that you're doing independently? Are you working with some of the tech companies to take this forward? Because we are seeing those partnerships being forged at this point in time. Apollo, for instance, on the healthcare services side, is tying up with Microsoft to take that forward. Are you looking at the partnership route, or are you doing this independently?
No, so absolutely. I think one more thing that you mentioned, and a lot of the other panelists also mentioned, is I think to take this forward, we need an ecosystem approach. Ecosystem approach as in, the regulators, the pharma companies, the medtech companies, the providers, all of us health tech companies, all of us need to come together and work on this, which is what will build the scale. That, and which is what will build the data, because AI is all about data, right? So I think it's absolutely essential that, if you see, we can go independently, but I personally feel that may not be the right route for us. So we're not going independently with that. We're partnering with a tech company. I think, interestingly, that reminds me that, the line between tech companies and healthcare companies is also blurring.
Isn't that the case across different sectors at this point in time? Everyone is a tech company today, or at least aspiring to become one.
So I think, that's one of the biggest this thing, because it reminds me that for example, Google. So there's a company called DeepMind, which is based out of the UK, which is part of Google, right? So they're doing some excellent work in the healthcare space. Their co-founder won a Nobel Prize this year, and their program, the AlphaFold, does excellent work in terms of showing giving details about the protein structures. So I think that is one area. There's another company called In Silico Medicine. So that is essentially a tech company, but it also has a pipeline of drugs, right? And in fact, they developed a new drug for hepatocellular carcinoma, which is basically liver cancer, within a span of 30 days, right? So from designing the drug to synthesizing the drug within a span of 30 days, that is the kind of potential that AI holds. So I think absolutely, you need to work with tech companies, and you need to work obviously with other components of the healthcare system to really bring about that AI revolution at a much faster pace.
At a much faster pace. But, Kaivan, you wanted to come in on this?
Yeah, so I think just one thing which is unique about healthcare, like when we talk about Gen AI, we always talk about probability of success, right? In this segment, 70% success, 80% success. But in healthcare, I think it's more around cost of inaccuracy or cost of failure, right? It's a deeply, deeply sensitive area. And I think the only point I wanted to add, Shireen, was that I think what it will do is to get you power in the hands of the patient. I think we've discussed a lot and not so much the patient. And I think where Gen AI can play a very significant role, where the cost of failure could come down is obviously prevention, right? We all know that 50% of health outcomes are determined by behavior,
Yeah.
right? And how Gen AI technology empowers the patient, right? I think is going to be a very key element. And I think the second, in addition to the prevention part, is productivity. I think we are a resource-constrained environment, whether it's doctors, whether it's nurses, and the ability to, remove mundane tasks out of a nurse's life, documentation, where the provider can actually treat many more patients, I think is the big game changer. And use cases around patient-physician interaction, the whole insurance provider interaction around the whole claim management, I think are areas where a lot of release of resources will be done. And then finally, once these are taken care of, personalization, prediction of outbreaks, predicting things, I think will come as the next level. But I think we need to focus on these things because healthcare being deeply sensitive, we need to just be very conscious of that.
No, absolutely. But, Ajay, I want to come back to you and, talk about what we just heard there from Anirudh. In terms of the startup ecosystem, not just here in India, but globally being able to drive some of the breakthroughs that he was talking about and some of the other breakthroughs that we've, of course, been, speaking about in the news recently. What do you believe is the need of the hour to be able to nurture that kind of innovation, specifically here in India? We're talking about partnerships, we're talking about creating these digital ecosystems, etc. What do you believe are the next steps required for us to ensure that this takes off?
No, excellent point. And I think there's a lot happening now. Just to draw a parallel, 25% of entire US healthcare VC funding goes towards healthcare AI today. I think similar will be the experience in India also over time. So I think there will be a lot more investment. There will be a lot more funds like us also who are essentially providing private capital to essentially some of these innovation technologies. A couple of our panelists spoke about the chatbot usage on the AI side. I have a very interesting example to share, and it's one of our portfolio companies. 1 out of every 8 patients in the world, eight people in the world suffer from some mental health issue. And mental health is greatly addressed through chatbot-based models. So basically, one of our companies, Visa, it's the most published mental health chatbot company in the world. Now, at 2 a.m., when you're feeling stressed, anxious, depressed, you cannot get a psychologist or a psychiatrist appointment. And if in developed countries, it could take you 4 weeks to get that appointment. Now, mental health issues can't wait that long.
Yeah.
But here is a company born out of India, developed algorithms based on 5 billion conversations, and has a clinically validated, they have a US FDA BDD approval, etc., to essentially engage with the user and the patient and relieve them of and clinically reduce the stress, anxious, anxiety levels. They've prevented 400 people from committing suicide. So some phenomenal work has happened in India leveraging AI. And here the Gen AI usage is tremendous to essentially replicate this model in multiple languages. So they've recently won a contract with Pune Municipal Corporation. They're working with CRPF. So amazing use cases you could translate into multiple languages and essentially do it. So great force. And to the point earlier about AI in life sciences and AI in healthcare, I think tremendous use cases are being found across drug discovery. Of course, everyone spoke about that, early screening, and also in personalized medicine.
Yeah.
So targeted therapies, right? So which protein biomarkers to target and essentially how to essentially bring that use case closer to the patient. So I think Hopefully, all of this effort is going to essentially improve the quality of outcomes for the patient and the ecosystem of payer providers and pharma companies, essentially all working in unison. And as people said, it is an ecosystem approach for us to solve for these challenges together.
And these are big, complex challenges that require all hands on deck. But Suresh, coming back to you, private equity money consolidation, both on the healthcare services side as well as the pharma side. Do you believe that is also going to be a crucial factor in both adoption and acceleration of AI implementation?
Sure, I think it will, and I think it will all start. Technology into pharma largely came through the VC funding in the Valley, the entire promise of the biotech, and we're seeing it repeat now in medtech as well. There are umpteen number of new tech companies that are getting into research in pharma all around in the US, in the Valley. So a lot of these new shoots who are going to be players, big players of the future, are all germinating there. So that's one data point. So you will have more players come by. The second is when you have, thanks to DeepSeek, hopefully there's going to be democratization of AI. And I think that will kind of play a very important role in adoption. So it's not just the funding, but also access to AI. The third thing I want to put is data, and more specifically about we Indians, right? Do we respect data? Do we kind of give data its due?
No.
Exactly.
That's the simple answer. What is data privacy?
But data privacy is another thing.
Yeah.
But even before that, I'm very comfortable about having my data. It could be strewn around. I might not know where it is, what it is, but I don't want to let it out, right? Firstly, I need to know what data I have, where I have, quality of data. And if you're talking about healthcare equity, interoperability of systems, to kind of leverage on the large data pool that we as India generate, that's where I think is the real leverage and the inflection point. And for that to happen, I think we need to respect the data that we have, clean up the data, have a data lake. And
who's going to do it? Or who should do it?
I think it's like charity begins at home. Let me give you a simple data point. ABDM today has 75 crores ABA cards. That is, 75 crore citizens have ABA card today, which means that you have potential to have their electronic health record on board. Now, the question is, how many service providers are in the ABDM? I think it's a question of trust. It comes to the data. Like, how can I put my data onto a public platform, right? And I think the leverage comes with, and government has to play a very important role on it. Government has its data privacy, but what it says is, as a data fiduciary, you have your responsibility. Data has to be collected for the purpose for which it has to be used. It hasn't to be misused. It has to be consented. So I think there is a method that's coming out of all these madness. And I think 2 years from now, as we're talking, we would probably be very conscious of the data that we do. Today, startups are making a big... So if you want a valuation for yourself as a startup, and I can tell you, I was one a few years ago, is what kind of data are you building? MedTech is learning from it. MedTech got into the game early. You talk to a MedTech person and say, talk about AI, talk about data, how is he leveraging, how are they kind of collaborating? They've been in the game much earlier. So I think we've got to learn a lesson from that and say, how do we as government, as private stakeholders, as private players, and as society, how do we kind of leverage this large database that we have? And I think that is what will provide access to AI and make AI kind of do wondrous things that will reduce the cost of healthcare and whatnot.
Yes, all of the magical stuff that we've been talking about. But, I want to pull back a little bit because as has, I think, been rightly pointed out by each of our speakers here on the panel, that while there is a significant headroom for the magical stuff to happen, we're still at the very basics in India at this point in time. And we're talking about the fact that we don't even have digitized health records to start with. So if I were to ask you for tangible next steps, not just from your own journey, but for the industry, for the country, national priorities that you believe we need to interlink as part of the India AI mission for the healthcare sector in specific? I'll start by asking you, Kshitij, what do you believe the next steps need to be, the tangible next steps?
Sure. One important thing that he spoke about is the ABDM, where ABHA cards, and we were one of the highest generating ABHA cards till last year in the healthcare ecosystem. It's a very important step. I think the next very important step is to have your own data lake. That's the critical step, I feel, to start talking about data, start talking about analysis, start talking about AI, or putting any layer of intelligence once you have that connected data. And third, I think, is implementation. Make sure that data is being entered correctly at the right time in all your digitized system. I think those are critical steps. Then, talent and having those ROIs and use cases, connecting the industry together to have a unified ecosystem. All that is existing in the country.
Is industry ready, though, to create a unified ecosystem?
If we've used ABHA too much in the pathology side that we do, and for our Aadhaar card checks, because for our industry, it's very, very important to know the marital status, the right marital status of the couple coming to us. So we've leveraged ABHA system to a great extent. And I think the digital ecosystem exists. It's just about in-house cleaning that you mentioned. That are you ready to upload your
marital
data?
Status, really?
Yes.
I didn't even realize that was a thing that you had to get into before you were actually providing your service.
Yeah, as per law, you're not supposed to be offering fertility services to live-in couples or non-married couples.
Interesting. Yeah. So that's a new learning. AI, not AI link, but a new learning nevertheless. Raj, tangible next steps.
Like Kshitij said, last 2 years we've been creating our data lake and driving adoption. Every week I send a mail saying
You were sending the mail, or your co-pilot is sending the mail?
Still I am sending the mail, but I noted his idea. I think the second part is just develop the internal capability, whether it's clinicians, whether it's leadership. I mean, we are a brick and mortar company. Our leaders, we are a hierarchical industry. Our leaders, whether clinical, non-clinical areas, are Gen X largely. I think that capability development is important because everything starts with mindset, leadership mindset. So that's another one. And just partner with reliable external third-party players who understand that, so that you learn and you don't miss out the boat while you are building new hospitals.
Well, yes, speaking of not missing out the boat, Sameer, let's talk about the next tangible steps for you, but also more importantly for the sector.
Yeah, so I think there's a ton of more of machine learning, not really so much of AI, but that's happening on the manufacturing side. There's a lot on the AI discovery side that is happening on R&D, and there is patient-facing innovation. I guess even within organizations today, what is happening is these are all initiatives that are not really necessarily connected. For an organization to be AI ready and derive the maximum value out of it, it would have to be internally connected as far as all of these initiatives are concerned. And as someone who's facing patients day in and day out, I guess the opportunity to do a lot more for the patients exists today. And that would also bring our industry to the next value step in terms of generating greater value, not only for the patient in terms of better outcomes, but also for the organization. And I think that's a win-win situation that one can really look at as the next logical step for the industry.
Well, speaking of the next logical step as being the win-win, Abrar, let me ask you what you believe you would like to focus on specifically, but also what we as an industry and as the government must prioritize.
I think clearly from a healthcare parlance or even otherwise, I think one is getting the data in place. So digitization is very important to ensure that the data is in place. And I think doctors have to be trained, especially in healthcare. Most of the data gets lost in the OPDs. So EMR has to be rampant. So you digitize the data, and then you build in the talent who can make sense of the data and implement. I think these are the three most logical steps and that's the basic. I think without that, AI is not going to work. That's what I think.
Absolutely. Anirudh?
Yeah, I think, as rightly mentioned by everyone, that I think upskilling, in fact, even yourself, whether it's even using just ChatGPT or Grok or something of that sort, is very important. That's something that I've been working on personally. But
Which one is it, Grok or
Grok, I prefer
ChatGPT?
Grok. But I think, I think a lot of times at least that's what we've seen in the pharma industry, some of these newer things become more widespread in terms of the adoption when the top companies start doing it, right? So, for example, over the last decade, we've seen, and we've often read reports in the media that about the quality issues with Indian pharma and so on and so forth, Indian generics, etc. But I think over the last 10 years, the kind of work that, of course, the government has done in association with the associations like the Indian Pharmaceutical Alliance or some of the other associations, and the kind of quality culture that was built over the last 10 years in Indian pharma and then has permeated down. I think something similar can happen for adoption of Gen AI and AI in general, because I think that's going to greatly benefit the Indian companies more so than anyone else, right? Because you mentioned that capital is something that's a big differential. Like, for example, the 10th largest R&D spend of a big pharma company, that is number 10 by R&D spend, is almost twice the revenue of the largest pharma company in India. That's the kind of a difference you're dealing with, right? So I think it's only going to benefit us in terms of innovation, and even the government, with the recent incentives, etc., is trying to drive innovation. So I think when we come together and as top companies, when we start implementing these and becoming pioneers of these and implementing these early on, these things also permeate to the mid-sized and the smaller companies. And I think that's what, helps it spread the adoption. So I think that is something that I personally see.
Yeah, the large companies being the early adopters, and that will hopefully drive the trickle down. Suresh?
Well, as outside-in people in the whole ecosystem, I think our responsibility is
Consultants are never outsiders. As inside as it can be.
So I guess our role is more in helping corporates and organizations see value, identify high-impact areas, and perhaps draw quick wins and co-pilots that can actually bring in an immediate belief that AI is working. Also, parallelly chalk out AI strategy in line with the larger objectives of the organization, and parallelly try and see how they can build the infrastructure required between cloud computing, data, then organized data governance. We talked a lot about how to handle data. And I guess that's too much for a company when it thinks about, I have to deliver to my patients, and here's another work which I'm not good at, and I need talent for this. So we fill in that gap of talent as well. So I guess that's a very important role. And we also play the role of making marriages happen. What kind of partnership? So you can call
You'll have to check his Aadhaar card as well.
So, if you want to begin an AI journey, come to us, in short. But truly, I feel we can play a bigger value-adding role in the whole adoption of AI. And ultimately, it all benefits to the corporates, generates value and wealth, and it provides affordable healthcare in the larger. So I see our role as that, and immediately that's what I can foresee our role as.
Well, we hope that we do see more marriages in this space that will take the journey forward as far as AI and its adoption in India is concerned. But I think to close what we've heard here from the panel, is there an openness, is there a willingness for Indian industry, whether it's life sciences, pharmaceuticals and healthcare services providers, to adopt AI? There certainly is. But are we really AI ready is the question at this point in time, whether it is from a governance point of view, it is from a data perspective, it's from an infrastructure perspective. And I think that's where the real work will need to be done. The nuts and bolts will need to be put in place before we can truly accrue the magical benefits that everyone is talking about. It could be a game changer, but there is a long distance to go before we can truly capitalize on the benefits that large-scale AI adoption can bring to India's healthcare services. But up, I think what is very, very clear from each one of our panelists today, whatever is done has to ensure that the patient is at the heart, not just of the conversation, but also of the software. And that will be a win-win for everyone involved. Thank you very, very much, gentlemen, for joining us here on this very special conversation. We will, of course, keep tracking the AI story in India and what's happening across different sectors. Today, you've heard from the life sciences and the healthcare services side, but a lot more conversation coming up here on CNBC TV 18. From all of us here on the team for now, goodbye and many thanks for watching.